Hello, everybody. Welcome. So this panel here is the strategies to increase adoption of IoT technologies. And we have a distinguished panel here today that we will introduce in just a moment. And we will be talking about IoT, IoT challenges, barriers to adoption, solutions, and just a number of opportunities and techniques to increase the adoption of IoT across the various verticals that we will be representing here today. So I'll be the moderator. My name is Sven Schrecker. I am with LHP Engineering Services. I spent 15 years with Intel and just left 4 weeks ago, so I'm still getting acclimated to the new title. I'm also the security co-chair for the Industrial Internet Consortium, which is the first demonstration right out over there. Swing by if you have a moment. We have an automotive security demo that's actually quite fascinating. So without any further ado, I will hand over to our panelists, and we will have 90 seconds each of introductions.
Sure. Thank you, Sven. My name is Mark Kraeling. I'm a product architect at GE Transportation. At GE Transportation, we build, deliver, and service heavy-haul freight locomotives. But obviously, heavy-haul freight locomotives is just a big hunk of metal with a power plant on board. So clearly, what our customer wants is more data, right? So even though we sell a locomotive, there's a tremendous amount of data on that locomotive and the control system, et cetera, that the customer would like to be able to utilize and use. So we sell intelligent platforms, rugged hardware, and also IoT framework solutions with fairly advanced analytics engines. So customers can actually run those algorithms and their own rules on board the locomotive and actually get their data back to their back office. So,
excellent, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Matthias. Moritz. I'm working for a German company, Acent, but as an independent consultant and living here in Barcelona. So if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards in Spanish, feel welcome. I have two main customers now. One is the company Bichareh, who is implementing big data solutions on the pharma productions, getting different data from pharma together to give recommendations for steering of energy, steering of production. And this is an interesting joint venture between, or a foundation between an American and a Spanish company, and pretty successful. And I've been one of the first users. When I was CIO of Almira, we implemented this and it worked. So I said, well, I will switch sides and do some consulting on this one. And the other one I'm working for is also a Spanish company called Everest, where we are doing innovative stuff like wearables, but all over body wearables. Our mother company, NTT, where we can take a sense of data of patients and do also recommendations. We cannot steer the wardrobe. We discussed this before, and we just get information for monitoring the body health. So this is one of the implementations we have successfully done in Japan.
Excellent. Gloria?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gloria Lozano. I work for Zurich Insurance in the business transformation team. My role is focused on innovation and in particular on applications of Internet of Things for commercial insurance. During the last year, we've been running a pilot in building telematics, trying to collect data from buildings and use this data to better protect the building, the people inside the buildings and their belongings. The industry is changing. The insurance industry is changing a lot because of all this digital disruption, including Internet of Things. And we are becoming, and we think that we should be becoming more customer-centric and focusing as an ecosystem in the customer to make better propositions to protect them and prevent the risk.
Hi, my name is Sung Lee. I'm a security architect and strategist at Intel. At Intel, we believe that the security rooted in hardware is the best. And so we enable a lot of hardware security roots from the platform itself, but also as part of the security architect at the IoT business group, we also want to make sure that the end-to-end system has security, and we look at the end-to-end system security all the way, and we develop systems in using a secure development lifecycle, and also look at a lot of defense and in-depth technologies.
Hi, my name is Farid Bichareh. I'm CTO at AASA. What we do is working on some innovative technology, especially on the wireless communication. A lot of people may know about it, a lot of people may not. Visible light communication. or in the other hand, we call it also Li-Fi. Basically, what we do is making the wireless communication available through the LED. And the reason that we started this innovative technology and we got into this because with a lot of concepts such as IoT and IoT, we see the amount of the data that being transferred is extensively growing every year, but every concepts and every application that comes out there. And maybe radio frequency and wireless communication in other formats and in other technology and not be able to deliver this or transfer this data everywhere with the speed that we want, with the security that we want. And we wanted to, with this new technology, innovative technology, give a bigger shoulder, a better shoulder for the wireless communication and radio frequency to make sure the concepts such as IoT will happen and take place better and with a better user experience and be basically possible.
Thank you. So we have a very diverse panel here. We have big company, small company, different verticals. We have different perspectives on IoT. And I think one of the interesting topics is that IoT is so quickly changing the world. Over the last 15 years, it's nearly unrecognizable in a number of different industries on the amount of changes. And within another 15 years, I mean, we're going to get even more rapid rate of innovation. So let's start off and just talk about, over the last 15 years, what did it look like 15 years ago? What does it look like now? And how do you project that into the future in terms of, the good parts and the bad parts? And we'll start with you, Matthias.
I think IoT has developed a lot in the last years, and from prototyping to final solution, what we should watch that we accompany these solutions with the appropriate framework. So if I want to buy something, the company who wants to sell it should be able to sell it.
Yeah.
I yesterday had a nice experience. I'm very interested in solar energy, so I connected to a company here in Spain and to put in smart solar energy. And to start with, they gave a website which didn't work. So then I connected there, and then I saw that the people on the other side of the phone were also using the website that didn't work. So it took 1 hour to get my data. I mean, does this company still have credibility to give me an Internet of Things solution on a secure and reliable way to work? I mean, this is what we have to watch. We have a lot of isolated things, but the integration stuff, and we discussed this before, and the integration, the standard interfacing, the communication of the things should be trustful, reliable, and secure, obviously. And this is one of the main topics that I want to bring over. The security, reliability, and trustfulness of the solutions has to work, because in the end, the final customer, and we are all final customers at home, will buy what he trusts,
Yeah.
and not anything else.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Trust. I mean, in locomotives, security is not important, right? Safety, trust. I mean, these are not even topics you think about, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, to his point, I think it's whenever anybody goes on their IoT strategy and they start thinking, okay, now I'm going to have not decisions made in the cloud, and I would argue there was no decisions actually in the cloud. It was a bunch of people just storing a lot of data and filling up hard drives. But once you start making those decisions now at the edge, yes, they have to be safe, they have to be secure, because you don't want to have, obviously, incorrect results. So.
Right. Well, I mean, how do we even assure that? Sung, I mean, is there anything in the hardware that can help us to assure the trustworthiness and the security? I mean, I guess the options that we have here are we let the industries evolve, and we hope that the developers suddenly become security savvy and that they're implementing secure solutions. Are there any other ways to go about that?
Sure. I'm going to take an example of 2015 GPAC. Most of you heard about it, and it'll be to the point that Matthias made. As we connect these systems, you have to make sure that the interconnection is proper. In that hack, what happened was that the entertainment system was connected to CAN bus. So why are they making that connection? Was it necessary, right? So it's not even about the making proper connection, but the whole design had to be looked at it. But also, part of the problem was that the firmware for the entertainment system was not signed. Right. And that's why the security researchers were able to swap that out with their own bad firmware. So if a hardware security solution is built in and then that entertainment system was using a secure boot, then the security researcher wouldn't have been able to swap that out as easily. So this is an example of where hardware security root of trust is important, but you also have to look at it end to end and look at it all the multiple ways to attack it, because it's a system of systems that we're building. It's very complicated.
Right, and really when the security comes down to implementing it correctly, because in that GPAC, there was a password on the radio. Unfortunately, you could reverse engineer the password by looking at the manufacturing date, which you can get from the VIN number, which is right there on the dashboard. And they actually did have a checksum on the original application, but nobody checked it. So when they put their own on there, it worked just fine, right? So it's a matter of implementing it correctly. So the challenge there is a complicated system made up of smaller subsystems. So Farid, as a smaller subsystem, right, is there an avenue there or a way to address that for the security and the privacy and, ways to go about that?
Right. I mean, let me just emphasize on the general point that you just mentioned, that when we come up with the new concepts like IoT and we want to make it available, and then we're using a lot of new technology, like someone like us coming into the picture and provide something new, how people will trust that? Is it built in? Is it the trustworthiness is there? Is it this technology, can I trust this from a hardware perspective, from the application perspective? These are the points that all of these new technologies, these companies that providing this new technology, doesn't matter if they're like big as Intel or small as like AASA, they have to be able to comply and provide that kind of basically confidence to the users and user experience that, hey, you can use this technology. This is already there. This is what we already trusted. This is what we already basically worked on to make sure you're always secure from the trustworthiness of the data, from the pipeline that nobody will get and hack you through the certain sensors or certain devices. We've heard that like I think a year ago that an IoT system in a lab was hacked through a small sensor inside a fish tank. Yeah. It was like so simple to the certain area. But back to your point, yes, I mean, this is something that all of these innovative technology people needs to focus on and look at it, because this definitely will be an obstacle of adoption of any new concept, any new technology in the world.
Right, so we've talked a bit about the security, but a lot of these, especially the industrial systems, have dependence there on safety and reliability. Those are the primary drivers there. So, I suspect that may actually be one problem: the security, the privacy, the safety, the reliability. To address each of those independently may not solve the problem, so you need to have a global view. And who enforces that, right? Because at the end of the day, if we have insurance that needs the data to figure out the risk, and not everybody is feeding the same data through the same interfaces, and it's how is that going to work? The more data sources we get, the harder it actually gets for you in insurance, doesn't it?
Yeah, in fact, all these innovations create new challenges for insurance. We cannot continue looking things individually or looking at protecting products. What we need to be doing is looking at the system as a whole and trying to provide a proper experience to the end user. So it's not about risk transferring anymore, who is at fault, but it's about understanding how the ecosystem can better protect the final user, which is at the end the need that we have.
Gotcha. So at the end of the day, it's the user, but what happens, for example, in automotive, when an autonomous driving comes out, right, there's not a driver. In an autonomous factory, a smart factory, there are not the workers, right? I mean, isn't the system fundamentally changing itself? I mean, these previous paradigms may no longer apply, right? I'm fairly sure that in the train industry, if there's a conductor, he certainly doesn't have to watch for the signals because there's information being passed there. I mean, the whole model is changing.
Yep, no, I totally agree. I think it's, as we shift and we start talking more and more about Internet of Things, Internet of Industrial Things and strategies, I mean, one of the key aspects, I think, is that us going and delivering a point solution, saying, oh, customer, if you just put this in, you'll get A, B, and C, and we don't integrate it in with their business practices and their data centers, because ultimately it is their data. They're the ones operating the locomotive. When you have people like the conductor that you just mentioned that has a very certain job function, and of course, yes, you're right, there are overlay or additional safety systems on board, so you have to make sure we check the signals. It isn't about GE Transportation or about somebody providing a service or a product. It's really about working with the customer, understanding, what are their safety practices, what are their procedures that they have in place, and how does your product, fit in and mesh in with there? Because I can't dictate security to a customer. What I can do is provide a product that meets their security standards, because in many cases, the customers I sell to are much, much larger companies than I am. So dictating what security is now, how do I fit into their security plan? How do I take the requirements and adapt our product? So.
I think it's very important to think that in the end of each or every process, name it connected cars, autonomous cars, name it even aspirin or pharmaceutical production, there's always a final customer. And this final customer has certain needs which have to be fulfilled. And this might be, if you come back to Internet of Things at home, the connected home, smart home, also the security has to be fulfilled, and it has to be fulfilled by the providers and the user himself. Because in the end, if he uses a very simple password, and there have been examples where television company even entered in a home with a laptop and were able to control curtains and doors because the settings of the basic router weren't changed from the beginning. I mean, this awareness, this training has to go also end to end, from the production side, where we train people to produce differently, and not necessarily, let's say, getting rid of jobs, changing profiles of the jobs, until the final customer who has also to change his way of living. If it comes to security, if it comes to childcare, if it comes to pet care, whatever, the world is changing, and we have to train and we have to accompany the customer to this way. For me, all this digital transformation stuff is a part of being a buzzword of consultants. It's a thing not to train technology, and a lot of people here love to talk about technology, but we have to talk about changing a society and philosophies, and we have to talk about general mindset changing and to overcome this change resistance.
I just wanted to add something. I mean, we discussed it also this before, that all this concept brings us back to the point that user experience end-to-end for the whole system is how important it is and how user experience needs to be defined, and also based on that, the standards. For new technology, for IoT itself, for all those little things that we're going to have, even from the insurance perspectives, how that would be examined. And I, as a provider of the new technology, will be safe if some failure happens. Also, my customer, as a user of this new, basically user of this new technology, innovative technology, will be basically trust the new technology and know if something happens in case, at least they're going to be covered properly, or some good things will happen to compensate basically what they're going to go through from that perspective, which brings to the insurance companies to enforce that kind of test, evaluation, and even helping to define this how user experience needs to be, and what is those standards from the security perspective, from the training, from the knowledge, from all different aspects of the whole IoT concepts and the concepts similar to this as well.
Well, I mean, you make it sound so easy, right? I mean, it sounds like this should all just naturally happen, right? I mean, it needs to be easy. It needs to be easy to implement. It needs to be easy for the user to configure. How does that happen? I mean, is that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, I think at some point, the easier you make it, it's probably easier for somebody else to get in and do something too, right? So. Again, I kind of go back to I agree, and I know a lot of panelists, and especially the person from Intel, I mean, they're definitely hardware solutions, and starting with a hardware root base of trust and having, secure images and making sure you can't update that software and putting different things in place is certainly important. We also have to remember, too, that we have older devices, right? So it can't be, it's the Internet of Things or Internet of Industrial Things. It's not the Internet of, just things after 2019, right? So it's evolving, but having, strategies in place when you're developing a product, whether it's a secure key store, things like that. I mean, there's other defensive strategies, obviously, that you may have to do if you don't have, newer hardware rooted-based trust.
Gotcha.
authentication. So it's certainly important.
And in some cases, it might be that you do not try it yourself at home. I mean, we are all professionals, and we do it on a professional base. And in some kind, we have to have this professional accompaniment also in the companies or at home. In the past, we had these insurance agents who were building up our insurance, and they wanted to sell something, but they also wanted to provide help. Now, perhaps we have a smart home agent or a smart car agent where we can go to and at least get some training, some first steps to get into this new world, because this is all about how to learn. When my mother's 80, and I gave her a tablet 3 or 4 years ago and said, where can I learn it? I said, normally, a tablet you don't have to learn because it's easy to understand. But nevertheless, there are things where we have to train people. And training, also in conversation. I mean, we technical people love to talk about technique, and we are leaving the user behind. And this is what we notice right now when we have this pressure and this obligation also to train people into a company and to help them into the next world, which is coming up pretty soon.
Right, well, but how do we help them? I mean, all the software is written differently. There might be standards, but are they enforced? Are there teeth to force people to do this? I mean, is there a common denominator?
So I want to bring 2 points. I think we're mixing a little bit here, consumer domain, but enterprise domain. I talk with a lot of enterprise customers as well. Like, for instance, Mark would be enterprise customers. And maybe Mark is an exception, but a lot of them don't know. They all say that security is important. But if I say, okay, can you go down one level deeper? Of that, what problem is keeping you awake? A lot of times they can't go down to the next level. And I feel that this is where security experts needs to guide them and help them. What are the common issues, pitfalls that you could have if you're not aware? So that's one of the things. And consumer markets, I think education is needed. So, but I think we need to work with the enterprise first and then expand that same knowledge set toward the consumer market. Now, the second point that I want to make is around the hardware root of trust and all the security technologies that are built into the platform. Past 10, 15 years, we've gotten smarter, and we have built a lot of technologies into the platform. But maybe it's not just Internet of Things, but there are so many ecosystems involved. And somewhere along the chain, sometimes it's not exposed. So by working from the end user perspective, by educating them, they can demand more from their suppliers. And hopefully that way this hardware root of trust that we have enabled will be exposed all the way through, and then that will be used in the marketplace.
I agree with you, Sang, because we need to go one step back and understand what is the problem and what we want to achieve. We are trying to push technology, we are trying to push security, we are trying to push lots of things to the customer, but at the end, is there a need? So what is the problem of somebody breaching the software in a house and taking control? The problem is the safety of the people that are in the house. So we need to tackle between all the industry solutions for that problem. I need to protect the people that are in the house so that they feel secure and they can use technology in a proper way. But it's not about pushing technology or pushing selling. It's about solving problems. And this is something that the industry, and in particular the people that are involved in the Internet of Things industry, is trying to push. So everybody needs to use Internet of Things. Okay, excellent. Myself, I'm working to promote Internet of Things in the commercial insurance. But the first thing that I need to ask is this the tool we need to use? And once you have the tool and you know the problem, you can put the tools in it. But you need to define or to understand what is the problem that you are solving instead of going directly to put technology, talk about technology. So let's go one step back and focus in the use cases first. And for that, we need an end-to-end or a holistic vision and not selling our piece as a supplier anymore.
I want to add something to this point, back to combining several different aspects of this. It's very important for new concepts that we define, right, to have a better user experience, to make sure the product and the technology and the concepts that we're providing is not only for the purpose of marketing. Back to the use cases, right? Is this product mature enough for this use case? Is this really solving an issue? Or is this, even from our perspective, which we're pushing innovative technology into the whole market and into the product providers or like IoT providers, that if this technology is mature enough to deliver what we want to do or what we want to achieve as far as different use cases, as far as the whole holistic concepts that we have. Because at the end, what none of us wants eventually will be put a bad taste of experience about the technology, about the concepts, about what we do, autonomous car, about the connected home, about the smart home, smart building, into the mouth of the users, right? If that happens, then it will be the hardest job comes in to turn that again, to get the trust back, and people trust again on this technology, on this concept. And if we can change that. I mean, we have to make sure us as a providers, us as a people who are in the market and have a correct communication to understand these use cases, and at the same time do our job better to understand the maturity of our products and not looking at only the revenue side of it or marketing side of it. This will be a lot, I think, important responsibility from our side to make sure this goes through properly.
I mean, to make a resume from my point of view, first of all, we talked a lot about usability and user-friendliness, which is one of the biggest issues, but the other one is breaking down silos. Let's say integrate solutions, integrate security solutions, make doors securely open that people can pass without being hurt, and to make things communicate on a safe basis. I mean, this is the things we discussed also beforehand, not create silos. And people who move with the public transport know what I'm talking about. There's a map for regional transport, a map for local transport, whatever, but they're not integrated. It's as easy as that. And this can be transported into other things. We have to make it communicate, and we have to make it safe.
But if it was easy, we would have done this. So how do we do this, right? I mean, listening to what all of you are saying, I'm imagining standards, okay? Well, that's great, but it takes forever, okay? So agree, that would solve the problem if it had enough teeth, but what else can we do? So what about regulation? Let's just have the government tell us what to do. Does that work for you?
I think I'll go and kick it off first. Regulation for our industry is usually a result of something bad that occurred, right? So kids playing in a room, as long as they don't get too noisy, mom doesn't come in and say, quiet down, right? So they're self-regulated, right? So when we look at things, we want to work, again, with customers, our customers, and have products that go into their business, right? Integrate seamlessly into their business, so they don't have to have something special over here or something special over there. Now, clearly, standardization comes about from a need that we need interoperability, whether it's with IoT devices, or in our use case, customer locomotives can actually go on each other's track. So if we're getting signaling aspects back of whether it's red, green, or yellow, locomotive customer A needs to be able to understand the signals for locomotive customer B. It's a very easy use case and kind of where standardization comes in. I think as our IoT products that we deliver start to mature and start to become, again, better integrated into our customers' business practices, I think we will see more standardization for whether it's the data transport or having messaging with security built in and things along those lines.
Okay, so I'm going to start to play a little bit of devil's advocate. So I represent the audience on this. So, okay, well, so if standardization is going to help with this, where is it? I mean, we've had plenty of time. Show me a security standard in automotive. Okay, show me a security standard in other. There are some, right? But I would say this is taking too long, and I'm not sure there's a big motivation there. So my argument is that regulation would force you to comply. With what? I don't know, whatever the heck that they make up, and different companies make up different things, so not sure what you get. What if we make it even worse? How about if we make you all liable for what you do in software? Huh? Would that do it?
What I would do firstly is I would integrate the regulatory authorities in defining the new regulation. I mean, we have been working in pharma, you always hear FDA, FDA, and everybody is saying FDA, and we oblige, but it's not the case. You can discuss with the FDA, and they are open to discuss also new solutions, and they're open to validate if they see there's a progress. So regulation, not in all areas, is always this strict, they're also flexible, and we have also to demand this flexibility, because this is like with governments, the flexibility takes time, and when we were discussing the digital patient file in Germany, it took 10 years until last Monday that they agreed on a standard. I mean, 10 years losing patients, losing people on the street by bad communication. I mean, we should force them, our governments and our authorization authorities, to be flexible with us and to go ahead with us.
Okay.
I've been involved with the Trust Computing Group past 10 years, and in that group, definitely there are government agencies, not just US government, but I think European governments' participation there, and different regions, Japanese governments, as well as even Indian governments, I believe. So I do believe to some degree it does help, and if you think about NIST 800 series, right? They had defined some recommendations for how the PC security system should work out. And I think this is what helped, personally I believe that this is what helped our enterprise domain to move closer to where it is today. And so perhaps we should expect some similar recommendation from agencies like that.
Right. I want to make a little bit comments here. Regulation is good, but I think accountability is more important, because you don't want people who doesn't know what you do regulate you, right? I mean, and what level they want to regulate you, especially the government. If you think regulation and standards doesn't come from the industry and the market, people who are motivated to do that because they're going to make money on it, if they're slow, so then consider how government will be slow without having that expertise and incentives to do it. But what government probably can do is make you to be accountable for what you're doing and what you're providing to the system or to the society or for everybody. That makes you probably a little bit push forward for getting these regulations and things like that. There are also certain things that you cannot regulate. For example, I just make an example, what we do right now, if you use radio frequency, there are a lot of regulations out there. You can, licenses out there that federal government controls that. But in my case, if we do like visible light communication, there is no regulation. The spectrum is free for everybody to use, so I can do whatever I want to do, and there is no interference because I'm within my walls, right? So I think more than regulation, maybe accountability and maybe some other incentives for the market, for the people who provides this kind of technology, this kind of concept will be better from government instead of doing the regulation, especially in a little bit more detailed or the lower level of that.
Now, I would be remiss, so just a super quick redirect, specific for GE Transportation and many of the railway companies. There is a group in the United States called the Association of American Railroads. And the Association of American Railroads is actually funded from the federal government. And what it is the membership consists of all of the customers, the big railroads, and their charter is to develop standards for the devices and things that they use on board locomotive or wayside or track maintenance, or just basically to get some sort of standardization. Suppliers can also participate and be members, associate members of that group. I bring it up for two things. Number one, it's very nice because now all of the railroad customers can say, no, 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 if you're going to put your equipment on my locomotive, it must meet A, B, and C. And now all the suppliers need to comply to that, right? The second thing, which I think is actually just as important, is it's actually kind of nice that I now have a set of standards that I can go meet, and I know it fits all of the customers, as opposed to having this customer saying, no, 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 you need to meet my standard and test to this spec. And another customer saying, no, 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 develop your product and meet this. It's going to be a different size. It's going to be a different environmental spec. So for me, it actually makes it cheaper and easier to go and develop products for them as well. So standardization sometimes I think is viewed as, oh, that's bad. If it's standard, that means this supplier and this supplier, it's going to get super competitive. And on the other hand, I think I welcome it because it's nice to actually say, okay, here's the set. This is what you need. Your product needs to meet. And then you can deliver to that. So again, that's very specific to us, but I think it's, again, coming together as customer set, a customer base, and saying, yep, this is the standards we want you to meet before you deliver your product to me.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like we went full circle and came back at standardization being the preferred. There was a little bit of acceptance around regulation. Nobody liked the liability part, surprisingly. But I mean, how do we get there, right? I mean, it's more than just a a country-based regulatory system. I mean, we're seeing society change here, right? And back for the first industrial revolution, when we started using steam power, it changed everything. It led to urbanization. And in the next industrial revolution, where we got the mechanization, and then we got the computerization, and now we're in the IoT, whatever that means, right? I mean, is
Data
this not
revolution, maybe.
The what?
Data revolution, maybe.
Sure, the data revolution. So I mean, this is a bigger picture, right? Is this even controllable? I mean, should we even try to control it? I don't know that they were, back in the first industrial revolution, predicting how this was going to go forward. I mean, is this even something that we can control?
I think that we cannot control it, and I think that we are in a, as you say, we are in a revolution. If we are in a revolution, let's see what happens first, and then standardize, regulate, and so on. So I think that the market is the one leading. And I was thinking in I don't know, Uber. So 5 years ago, we didn't have any clue on these business models, new business models. But somebody detected a customer need, focus on customer, and started to develop. And then we've seen the need of standardize, regulate, and put solutions to the problems or the challenges that appear because of this disruptive change. And I think that the Internet of Things will enable this kind of stuff. For example, if we look at the current buildings that we have, and I send somebody to cover the insurance of the building, so I need to have a risk manager that understands, assess the risk, and let us know, okay, this risk is whatever, and I will pay if something goes wrong in your building. Okay, that was an approach. Now I have an opportunity that is given by the data that you were just mentioning. And then I can collect the data from the building and predict what things could be wrong. I can assess the risk based on data, not only in the knowledge of one person, or this data can help this person to support better the case. So at the end, I will be changing the model on how I insure the house, because I will have information and data to be doing so. Then my offer or my value proposition to this customer will change. And as a consequence, I start to change the things in the ecosystem, and standardization, regulation will come later. So it's been very long, but it was an example of how I see that it goes the other way around indeed.
But that's a fundamental change, right? That's like, so in a smart building that you may be insuring, right? Although the owner may own the property, is he actually running the building? Who's running the building, and who owns that data, by the way? I mean, this is the building's data. Is it the people who happen to be walking through? Does the building have to be aware of who's in and who's got a privacy policy? Is it a situation where I once hit a button and now all my data is freely available? Automotive is changing. The smart buildings, the smart cities. There's some big changes here.
But it's again about collaboration. So we have the mentality of who owns the data. The data will be useful for the full ecosystem. And if I want to make a good proposition to a customer, I need to cooperate with the other parts in the ecosystem so that we can take from the data the best and understand what's going on. So with the fragmented information, I won't be able to make a proposition to the customer that makes sense.
Yeah, so insurance seems to be pretty heavily affected there. But I mean, we're in the midst of the IoT revolution. I would argue that the security and the safety and the reliability are still catching up, and yet we're flying forward, right? We're not waiting for these things to catch up, we're moving forward. I mean, what comes next? We're in IoT now, what comes next?
IoE.
What is IoE?
The IOI, Internet of
IOI.
Individuals.
Internet of individuals.
Because we are all individuals, and if you see the pet business where your dog has a chip and your cat has a chip, when do we have a chip? And how can we be monitored then? This is a philosophic question, and sorry about that, I will send the last people out of the building, but this is a very philosophic question, and we have to get prepared for that also. In the end, all what we discussed this midday is about individuals and about society and about working and living together. And this IoI thing is also something we have at least to have in mind when it comes to controllability. I mean, we have already wearables. We have cars which can be monitored where the way they went. We have credit cards which are monitored, where you are going. There's building of all streets in base of what goods have been purchased by which credit cards. I mean, you can monitor. The banks have all this data in control.
Right.
Next step is individuals.
Now the problem would be where we put the line, like defined line between right of privacy and all this information that we have. I mean, at the same time, it gives me a comfort to have these wearable devices, and I have a lot of good things with it. But at the same time, collecting a lot of information, and who has it?
Yeah.
The owner of this watch, the manufacturer of the watch, has all the information or not? That's another regulation or another question that I, as a user, not even as a provider, now myself will be concerned about that if I'm using all this IoT with all this amount of data, who owns it and where it goes and how it will be used against me or for me or all those kind of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When this happens, I think I'm going to move into a cave somewhere in the middle. But I think I'm more of an older generation, and that's why I'm thinking like that. Either that or I have too many security knowledge, and that scares me. Having said that, I think I noticed the younger generation, they don't care about the data the way perhaps I think about it. And perhaps that's going to bring a completely different business model and different enabler. You said that do we control it? I don't think we can personally, but try to take advantage of the current situation and trying to reap the benefit out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine this. Imagine 30 years ago, if we would have known what we have to give up on privacy to get the technology that we have now, would we have made that trade-off? And imagine this. The rate that the technology evolves is increasing over time, as is the complexity. Is there a point where we hit an inflection point where it's evolving too quickly and becoming too complicated that it all collapses in on each other? Food for thought for the audience. So I think we're hitting the end of our session here, and we did want to have some time for questions from the audience. So if anybody has any questions, we have a microphone here and microphone over there and over there. We do ask that you ask your question and have it answered within 60 seconds so we can get a couple of questions out there. Anybody have any questions? Because I know I do. Okay, so then let me ask you guys this then. So based on this increased rate of innovation, is there a point where this becomes unsustainable? I mean, how is this going to happen?
Personally, I don't think so, right? Whether it's, we know we have more and more data. We know there's more and more value to get out of the data, which is why people are deploying IoT systems in the first place. Infrastructure is already catching up, whether it's Intel technology with processing or any of the other processing companies, 5G capability to get data, latency speeds as well as bandwidth is a lot higher. I think the infrastructure things will catch up, right? It's for anything IoT related, for me, it's about the use case. It's about what's the value, and if there's value to do it, then it's going to happen. They're going to do it. So just however fast that goes, I think is what's going to happen.
Okay, so we can continue to innovate at these increasingly rapid rates with that complexity, because that would be excellent if we could. I just worry a little bit. Civilization ends at some point, right? Let's hope it's not technology based. So let me ask you this then. So as it does get more complex, do we not have to abstract? Right? So there was an interesting comment made yesterday that when you hit a database in the cloud, there is a massive level of complexity underneath there that you just don't see. It's isolated from you. It's exposed through very narrow interfaces. Is that the way forward? I mean, how are we going to make this, and who's going to define that?
That's certainly the approach that we've been going after with the security. Security technology could be very complex. I don't expect average developer to understand all the security nuances and how you have to use it. So we're trying to come up with a simpler model, simpler API, where they can, for example, just say, hey, give me the key, right? Not necessarily define which algorithm, what is the key length, and all that gory detail. We try to hide it, but make it easier for our developer to use it. And ultimately, that will transfer to the application layer, and then end user will benefit from it too.
Right, so making it easy seems to be the key for IoT. We just need to be able to commit, right? Because I mean, just not seeing a lot of security adoption. There's safety adoption is just now coming in. Reliability seems to be one of the drivers. Is there any way to accelerate the adoption of the security other than the standardization and the interfaces, which is, a good way to do it? It just takes time, right? Is there anything that we can do to enable that, right? So insurance being the example, if we don't enable all the pieces to provide the data, you're not going to get it. You're going to get incomplete data, mismatched data, untrustworthy data. It's going to be a mess. You need him to build his components so that they send the same data, that when they're all in the locomotive, they all upload to you based on this hardware, based on this implementation. It all needs to work together, and I'm not seeing that out there.
You don't see, and this is why it's not scaling. So right now we are just putting the ecosystem together in pilots, and everybody are doing pilots. But the thing is, it will achieve. We will find a moment when the market will demand the solutions, and at the moment we will be cooperating. Right now, we don't scale because we don't find the business cases and the way to monetize what we are proposing. And maybe it's because we are going ahead of the market, and it will come, I guess.
Gotcha. So when you come to an event like this and you walk out and you see all these fabulous innovations ahead of the market, I guess time will tell. So we'll see what happens. Oh, we do have a question. Please hop up. 60 seconds.
Okay, I just had some comments on your questions actually. One of them is that actually in my opinion, what I saw based on the statistics and things on the market, well, the cost of cybercrime for enterprises by 2020 is about 2 trillion globally. And according to Gartner, 25% of the cyber crimes will involve IoT by 2020. And the whole market of IoT is about 460 something by 2020. So the thing is that, does it really worth doing that? Because the cost of cybercrime will be over 500 billion. So, and the cost of actually the whole market of IoT will be around 460. So is it really worth doing that and adopting that actually? And yeah, so the thing is that, and another comment I have for your last question is that, in my opinion, it's better actually to show the value of IoT to vendors, because the thing is that it's not my word, it's according to Bain, that enterprise user would pay 22% more per device if they were secure, and they would buy more IoT, 70% more IoT devices, again, if they were secure. So we all talk about regulations and things and something that, enforce you doing something. Well, when you want to enforce someone, well, as you mentioned, we're reluctant to do that. But if we talk about the value and exactly make it clear for the vendors, I mean, they would adopt that. Who don't like that, when I say, for example, it increases your revenue, it brings you value and benefit. Who is the person who doesn't accept that? This is the other thing, I think.
I mean, this is what you mentioned. You can balance it on your own. If we sell safer things, the cybercrime costs will go down and the internet thing will go up. I mean, this is the topic where we have, and I much agree with my colleague from Intel. If we implement secure solutions, user-friendly solutions, the market will even increase higher. So if the things that we are working are reliable, trustful, and secure, cybercrime guys will always exist, and they will always make their money, but we can make it very difficult for them to make the money.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think I think we're out of time here, but I think you've inspired me that actually there's more money in the cybercrime than there is in IoT. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. We appreciate the session, and hopefully you got something entertaining and educational out of that. So how about a round of applause for the panelists? Thank you. So, thank you.